So I'll be honest with you all. The idea for a video comparing Shrek and the Cat in the Hat came to me many years ago, while I was studying my BA at university. When I put it alongside other ideas for videos, including for ones covering films such as Jojo Rabbit and Frozen 2, it, to my surprise, was a more popular vote. And I started working on a video during my third year of uni. This ended up being postponed many times, and since 2022, ended up in development hell. But I decided to rewrite the script and re-record and re-edit the video, especially with the improved audio and editing of my recent videos. And now I'm bringing it to you. The Cat in the Hat was a film that I did not like growing up, especially as I found the titular cat too annoying and creepy, and the jokes unfunny. But as I've gotten older, I've met a lot of people who really like it, and while that's fine, it made me wonder, really? So eventually, I decided to go back and rewatch the film, just to see if it was any better. But honestly, it's as bad as I remember. But let's take a look at Shrek. Shrek has been an iconic movie and franchise for over 2 decades, with 2 good sequels. There was a significantly less good one in between, but we can disregard it. Hey, Shrek Forever After did. And there's another one coming out next year, but it's too early to voice a proper opinion. Anyway, after Shrek came out in 2001, many films tried to copy the film's formula, but although some films succeeded, more often than not, they simply failed to understand the context of the formula in Shrek, and it resulted in a number of terrible comedy films in the 2000s that featured excessive cultural references, pop songs, and childish attempts to make the film more appealing to adults. The Cat in the Hat is one of the worst films in this regard. The film in general is just awful, but it seems to be trying to copy Shrek's formula, though not having that many pop songs, while having more in common with it than simply this, including being a feature-length adaptation of a short story and starring Mike Myers. But while I currently have no plans to do a full video on why this film is a disaster, I think a lot of it can be summed up when talking about how Shrek does so many things better. So, let's get into these. For those who somehow don't know, The Cat in the Hat is based on a 61-page picture book written by the late Dr. Seuss. The book was a critical and financial success when it was published in 1957, and has become probably Seuss's most famous story. Something some of you may not know is that Shrek is based on a 30-page picture book written by the late William Steig. The book is not as famous as the film, and although I've only read the synopsis and not the book itself, I can still say it was turned into a great film. Both Shrek and The Cat in the Hat are based on short picture books, but while the former was turned into a great film that became the inaugural Best Animated Feature winner and even received a Best Adapted Screenplay nomination, as well as being added to the National Film Registry in 2020, the latter became an abysmal film that was lambasted by critics, flopped at the box office, and killed all future plans for live-action Seuss movies. But at least it's inspired some funny memes. In the case of Shrek, the story told is actually really intriguing, working as a piss-take of fairy tales and Disney movies, and almost every scene and character is integral to the story, with the exception of the Hallelujah song sequence, which isn't even really making fun of the misunderstanding bit, but when the rest of the story works so well, it's not such a big deal. The Cat in the Hat, on the other hand, really does not need to be as long as it was, and throws in a lot of stupid and pointless scenes and characters that don't really enhance the story, and makes problematic changes to the book. Artistic license is fine, but not when you take away what made the source material great, and replace it with stuff that is nowhere near as good. And The Cat in the Hat is a perfect example of disrespecting the source material. So let's look at the characters in Shrek, including Shrek himself. Shrek is an interesting character. He has layers! He's an ogre who enjoys living alone in a swamp, and being a disgusting guy. However, he's been alone for so long that he's never properly acknowledged his loneliness. Shrek's arc of acknowledging the downsides to life and his insecurities, learning his own flaws, and learning to love both romantically and platonically, are achieved through the actions of Donkey, Fiona, and Farquaad. So Shrek is a character a lot of us can identify with, and overall, a likeable, intriguing protagonist. Donkey serves as the comic relief side character, but he also serves importance in the film's narrative. He helps Shrek get to Duloc, and it's him who Shrek opens up to about how everyone judges him without knowing him, which Donkey hasn't done. And this makes Shrek realise that someone does care about him. Shrek initially disliked Donkey, but has come to accept him as a friend, and realises he may be a good person himself. Fiona is also integral to the story, as her being locked in a tower is the quest Farquaad sends Shrek on, so that Shrek can get rid of all the fairy tale creatures in his swamp. But through getting to know her, Shrek learns to love someone, and she also finds love in him, which makes Shrek acknowledge even more appreciation of himself. Plus, she hears Shrek opening up to Donkey, and this makes her realise that she may have been too judgmental herself, which only furthers the point about Donkey's importance in the story. And Farquaad is obviously integral to the story, because without him, Shrek never would have gone on the quest in the first place. Plus he does generate some good laughs. Although, the jokes about his height are not so funny. They get thin very quickly, but they also kind of contradict the message about not judging people based on appearances, in an otherwise really well executed message. Then we have the Cat in the Hat. The characters are so unlikable, and they really contradict the more simple, interesting characters of the book. In the book and 1971 TV special, the cat was kind, caring, funny, and although a bit of a nuisance, he was never a legitimate threat, and he knew when enough was enough. In the film, he's annoying, creepy, mean, sadistic, crude, and perverted, and he causes havoc beyond what the book counterpart did. He gets the kids to sign a contract agreeing that nothing bad will happen, and yet, loads of bad stuff happens. But he's not the only awfully written character in this movie. Conrad and Sally are also terribly written characters, who completely contradict the book's message, this being that sometimes a little bit of rule breaking is okay as long as it doesn't go too far. Dr. Seuss got this across well, because the kids were normal kids. However, as Nostalgia Critic has similarly mentioned, Conrad is already a messy troublemaker, and Sally is a hypocritical, self-obsessed control freak, which makes the message confused. What's more, Sally has a plotline about no one liking her for obvious reasons, and at one point, we see that her friends had a party and didn't invite her. The film dwells on this for a moment, to make it look like she'll reconcile with her friends, but it goes nowhere. And then we have Sally being the Peppa Pig narrator in the next scene by stating the obvious.
Can't believe it wasn't invited to that party.
The mother is a thinly written character as well. Her quote-unquote argument with Conrad feels too mean-spirited from both of them, especially since there's not enough build-up for such harsh words to come from them. In addition, Larry, a character who wasn't even in the original books, has a story thread in this film. But there is actually no reason for him to be in the story. His presence has absolutely no impact, and he's such a weak villain. 90% of his dialogue is him laughing evilly and bragging about his scheme. If you were to take a shot every single time a character mentioned military school in this film, you'd probably be passed out on the floor. But what's a good character without a good performance? For this one, I'm going to be going with line delivery, because the acting in Shrek doesn't involve facial expression or body language, and thus I couldn't compare the two films in this regard. But one of the things that makes Shrek so good is the vocal performances. Talk about getting the best people to voice these characters. Mike Myers was clearly very passionate about this film, to the point where he re-recorded all his dialogue with a Scottish accent, and it very much improved the film. Eddie Murphy, Cameron Diaz, and John Lithgow are all perfectly cast as well, and they can make the simplest lines hilarious in their delivery and timing.
Why are you following me?
Where do, I sleep?
Outside! Now kiss me!
These lines aren't funny on paper, but the way the actors deliver the lines is what makes them hilarious. But these actors also nail the more serious line deliveries. The emotional beats are carried very well through the more serious interactions between Myers, Murphy, and Diaz, while Lithgow is almost entirely in the comedic department, but also hilarious nonetheless. Then we have the Cat in the Hat. My god, are these performances terrible. These performances are contenders for the least interested performances I've ever seen in a film. Mike Myers had to be legally forced to do this film, and that really shows in his vocal performance, putting on an incredibly annoying voice, and always sounding like he's out of breath. He certainly did not put the same passion into this project as he did with Shrek. The other performances are terrible as well. While it is partly on the writers for not giving enough build-up to the serious conflicts the film tries to present, the actors also deliver it horribly. I've got nothing against these actors, and Dakota Fanning has proven herself to be a better actress in other things, but in this film, neither she nor Spencer Breslin show any interest in their roles whatsoever. And the same can be said for Kelly Preston as the mother. As a result, the emotional beats the film tries to get feel forced from a writing point of view and from an acting point of view.
Why don't you go upstairs? The stairs are destroyed.
You know, that joke might have worked, except the delivery was so monotone, and not in a comedic deadpan way, it ruined it. And let's get further into the execution of humour. So something a lot of kids' movies have, to keep the parents engaged too, is adult-orientated humour. And I'm perfectly okay with kids' movies sliding a few adult jokes into their films, if they're subtle. Shrek features a lot of adult jokes, but it manages to keep them subtle so that kids won't pick up on or question them, and the majority of them are quite funny. The It's a Small World-esque puppet show outside Duloc is quite funny, and the lyrics manage to slide in an adult joke in a subtle way, because although parents will know the word ass is implied, kids will see that face rhymes with place, and not notice the implied rude rhyme that parents will pick up on. Another one that works well is actually a double entendre.
Wait, where are you going?
Well, I have to save my ass.
The double entendre is subtle, because as well as ass being the American word for arse, it's also a term for a donkey, who Shrek is trying to save. The film even slides in a scene where Lord Farquaad gets a little too excited over Princess Fiona and pulls the covers up. When I was a kid, I thought his chest was cold. As a teen, I realised he was hiding something that was long, hard, and had cum in it. And no, it wasn't a cucumber. And speaking of Farquaad, his name, of course, sounds like fuckwad. But of course, in the film, it's shown to be spelled as Farquaad, and as such, kids don't pick up on the F word. So let's look at the adult jokes in The Cat in the Hat, of which there are many.
Who is this? Oh.
That's my mom.
Awkward. Yeah.
Yeah, I think a kid could figure out that that's a little more than amazement. A film that does a similar joke to this is Toy Story 2, where Buzz's wings pop open after he sees Jessie let Buster out. But it works much better there, because when you're younger, it actually does come across as Buzz being speechless, and it's kept short and sweet. And then when you get older, you finally understand the situation, and it's funny. The Cat in the Hat, however, dwells on it for far too long.
Here she is, the super luxurious omnidirectional whatchamajigger, or SLOW for short.
SLOW?
Yeah, slow. It's better than the last name we had. Super hydraulic instantaneous transporter.
Oh, you mean...
No! Quick to the slow!
Again, a kid can figure that out. Given that SLOW is an abbreviation for super luxurious omnipotent whatchamajigger, and the film makes that clear, I think a kid can very easily take the first letter from each word of super hydraulic instantaneous transporter and spell shit. Madagascar did a similar joke to this, but it was much more subtle there, because although Marty says, "Oh, sugar honey iced tea," there's no implication for a kid to take the first letter of each word. If you want to make a kids movie and slide some adult jokes in for the adults watching it with them, remember to stick to the 3 S's: short, sweet, subtle. But if you want your execution to end up like The Cat in the Hat, go with the other 3 S's: slow, sickening, shit. Something else Shrek does well is the use of burps and farts. And that sounds weird, but they're used to establish the disgusting nature of ogres, whether it be Shrek farting in the pond, or burping to light a fire. You also have a scene where Donkey calls out Shrek for burping in front of Fiona, only for Fiona to do the same thing. Shrek and Donkey look at each other as if they weren't expecting it from a princess, which more or less represents how Fiona works as a parody of Disney princesses, while rejecting the stereotypes that can be found in many of them. So, as weird as it sounds, burps and farts have context in Shrek, at least for the most part in these 3 films. Not you, Shrek the Turd. And I cannot say the same about The Cat in the Hat. There is so much toilet humour in this film, and none of it is funny. There's burping and farting, and also piss jokes. The cat literally mentions about how the fish drinks where he pees. And there's more.
I knew that milk would come back to haunt me. I can't believe you whizzed on my taco!
I wet my jar.
Ugh. And there's also this joke.
Let's take a look under the hood. Where's my dad? Sorry.
Oh yeah, stereotypes. This film has several. And the stereotype is pretty much always the punchline. Did you ever notice how The Cat in the Hat has a lot of stereotypes? That's the joke. Yep, this film has the same problems as a lot of modern Family Guy, taking certain stereotypes and making them the punchline of the joke. Stereotypes do not equal humour. And that might sound weird when you consider shows like The Simpsons, South Park and The Inbetweeners, which feature a lot of stereotypical characters, but they don't usually make the stereotype the punchline of the joke, whereas this film pretty much does. Although this scene does also have the one mildly funny joke in the whole film.
Just sign my petition with this large, oversized pen that requires 2 hands.
And there's also jokes that I don't get even as an adult.
She was gonna wear that tonight and you ruined it.
Honey, it was ruined when she bought it. Yeah.
Or this one. First off, why did the cat need to replace himself with the piñata? And I'll let the rest of it speak for itself. I straight up don't get these jokes.
You should have gone for the head.
So, I think those are all the comparisons I can make between the 2 films regarding the performances, the extended runtime of the source material, the character writing and development, the adult humour, and the toilet humour. But before I wrap it all up, I actually would like to take the time to mention the few things I do like about The Cat in the Hat. So, while I do hate The Cat in the Hat overall, there are a few areas of the film that aren't terrible. Although it does have horrible makeup and visual effects, the sets and costumes are actually pretty good for the most part. They're detailed, colourful, and actually look like they were ripped out of a Dr. Seuss book. Though I don't like how the cat's costume looks like a giant skunk. Maybe this was the fate of Pepe Le Pew, and that's why he was absent from Space Jam 2, potentially even killed at the hands of these even more atrocious characters. While I find the Fun 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 song very annoying and repetitive, the instrumental scores are actually pretty nice to listen to, and the cinematography is unironically amazing. I can't fault any contribution made by the amazing Emmanuel Lubezki. His cinematography is great, even when the film isn't. And there's that single mildly funny joke I mentioned earlier. And now on to the conclusion. So while Shrek has committed vocal performances, makes proper use of a longer runtime, creates interesting characters and character arcs, executes adult humour well, and provides context for its toilet humour, The Cat in the Hat doesn't do any of these. The performances are wooden, the characters and their arcs are boring, the adult humour is horribly executed and unfunny, and the toilet humour is completely gratuitous.
Please.
Outside!
I don't think I need to go any more into depth on why Shrek is a great movie, because I can't really add much beyond these points, but I chose to do this video to show that a lot of things The Cat in the Hat does horribly can be done much better. And Shrek, being a very funny and impactful movie, was the first to come to mind in conveying this. The Cat in the Hat, however, is just insulting. While there was clearly effort put into the sets, costumes, cinematography and music, clearly no effort was put anywhere else beyond this. You legitimately have to try to make a movie this bad. It's not the worst film I've ever seen, but I can't bring myself to give it any more than a 2 out of 10, and that's for the people who actually seem to give a shit about their jobs, including the great Emmanuel Lubezki. Also, if you ask me who I think should have directed this movie, I'd probably say Wes Anderson. The visual style is like something you'd see in one of his films. I do wonder who he would have cast to play the cat. Possibly either Bill Murray or Owen Wilson. Though I do wonder if Bill Murray would add this portrayal of a cat to his list of regrets as well as Garfield. A while back, I did a video comparing Shrek and The Cat in the Hat, and why the former worked and the latter didn't. In that video, I said this.
Something some of you may not know is that Shrek is based on a 30-page picture book written by the late William Steig. The book is not as famous as the film, and although I've only read the synopsis and not the book itself, I can still say it was turned into a great film.
After the video came out, I contemplated doing a follow-up to that video, which would include reading the Shrek book. Shrek is a great movie, but is it a great adaptation? Well, let's find out. Shrek is a fractured fairy tale story, but it utilises this in a different way to the film. The story is about a sadistic ogre named Shrek, who enjoys causing havoc. His parents decide he must be sent out into the world to do his share of damage, and, literally, kick him out the swamp. Shrek learns of his fortune from a witch, who tells him that by saying the magic words, apple strudel, he will be taken to a castle by a donkey, where he will battle a knight and marry a princess even uglier than him. Along the way, Shrek causes havoc to various creatures he encounters, before meeting the donkey, who takes him to the castle. Shrek confronts and defeats the knight guarding the castle, and meets the princess, with whom he is mutually smitten by their shared ugliness. They marry, and live horribly ever after. Shrek is shown to be content with his terrifying appearance and personality, wanting to have dominance over others, as shown in his nightmare where kids are shown to not be afraid of him. This is also represented when he enters the castle. Although initially frightened by what appears to be an army of hideous creatures, it's merely the Hall of Mirrors, which allows Shrek to maintain his confidence. Shrek embodies a typical fairy tale story, but is told from the perspective of a not-so-typical protagonist. This being a villainous protagonist with a horrific appearance, who is content with this, and able to find true love in spite of his terrifying appearance and persona. Most typical fairy tales see the villain lose, but in this one, the villain wins, showcasing how some villains do indeed get happy endings. And now let's talk about the film. The film plays out the fractured fairy tale approach differently from the book. Due to films being able to have more aspects than just writing and illustrations, and the film being made after the Disney Renaissance ended, Shrek was able to utilise pop songs to serve as a contrast to Disney's musical numbers. Although the Shrek book did have grainy illustrations, the limitations of these illustrations, and the fact that computer animation was early stages at the time, wouldn't have allowed for it to have a 3D art style to contrast with Disney's 2D style. By the time the film came out, computer animation was advanced enough that they could use it to tell a story starring an ogre, donkey and 2 humans, and the grainy 3D art style was used to contrast with Disney's clean 2D aesthetic. In the book, the characters are much less fleshed out, mainly due to the book only being 30 pages. In the book, Shrek is much more villainous, taking full pride in his intimidating appearance and nature, and having no redeeming qualities. The donkey only appears to take Shrek to the castle, and the princess only appears at the end, and she and Shrek live horribly ever after. Shrek has a nightmare in which kids are not afraid of him, showing how he fears the idea of not being feared, as he would not be able to continue terrorising those who came across him. This may have been the inspiration for the plot point in Shrek Forever After, where he longs for the days where he was feared. The book's short length, and the film's feature length, allowed for the characters in the films to be more fleshed out, with Shrek being capable of being disgusting, and also feared by the villagers. But, rather than relishing in this, it makes him insecure, and prefers to be alone on account of people judging him before they know him. His arc involves him learning to appreciate himself, open up to others about his insecurities, and find genuine connections in his friendship with Donkey and feelings for Fiona. Donkey does help Shrek get to the castle, but also serves as a comic relief, and the one who Shrek opens up to and finds a friend in, which is part of his character arc. And Fiona isn't just there to be Shrek's love interest, nor is she ugly 24/7. She's the human princess who Shrek has been sent by Lord Farquaad, who is not in the original book, to rescue. They don't fall in love at first sight either, but rather through forming a genuine connection. And when Fiona reveals her ogre curse to Shrek, which becomes 24/7, he reassures her that he still finds her beautiful, leading to their marriage, which is attended by their newfound friends. While the book and film take different approaches in reaching their messages, the underlying themes and messages of learning to love yourself and how you can find love regardless of appearance are present in both. So with all this said, is Shrek a great adaptation? While Shrek is a great film, I wouldn't necessarily call it a great adaptation, mainly because there's so much artistic license. However, artistic license doesn't equal a bad adaptation. I consider the film a good adaptation on account of understanding the book's message, about being true to yourself and how anyone, regardless of appearance, is capable of finding love. While I do prefer the film by a landslide, I do think the book is good, and I think both stand out in their own ways, while both maintaining a similar message and good executions of that message. A lot of people are not familiar with the original book of Shrek, and if you haven't read it, I'd recommend doing so. Some parents objectified to the book, feeling it was unsuitable for children. Now, what could possibly be... Back in February, we saw the first teaser for Shrek 5, which is set to be released in December 2026. Since doing a few videos on Shrek, as well as the book that inspired it, I wondered about a potential synopsis for the fifth film. The teaser drew a polarising response, with some criticising it for looking too different from the previous films, and others praising it for what they perceived as improvements in technology. I personally don't like the aesthetic. Above all, I think it looks far too clean, which contrasts with Shrek's grainy 3D art style, which was intended to contrast with Disney's clean 2D aesthetic. While doing my video answering if the film adaptation of Shrek was a great adaptation of the original book, I looked at the art style of the book, and pondered a potential storyline for the fifth film. What if the clean aesthetic we saw in the trailer was intentional? What if the storyline saw Shrek seeing everything as too polished all of a sudden, and he and Donkey ended up journeying into, you guessed it, a 2D world? Shrek utilised a grainy 3D art style to contrast with Disney's clean 2D art style. In the years since that film came out, Disney shut down their 2D studio, and have since stuck primarily to 3D, only bringing back 2D for certain projects. At this point, we have a grainy 3D art style, contrasting with a clean 3D art style. And Shrek is supposed to subvert fairytale tropes amongst other tropes, such as characters journeying into the real world. So, what if Shrek 5 served as the opposite to Disney's modern feature films, and, for the majority of its runtime, utilised a grainy 2D art style to contrast with Disney's clean 3D art style? I'd welcome an aesthetic based on the illustrations from the book with open arms. And DreamWorks Animation did do 2D animated films in their first few years. Remember the masterpiece that was The Prince of Egypt? Maybe Shrek and Donkey encounter the characters from the book, who fear the former, with Shrek being unsurprised on account of the former prejudice of the humans in his world. Along the way, the Shrek of that world accidentally stumbles into the clean 3D world, and dislikes the environment, and how everyone loves him. He uses his fire breath to terrorise the creatures of that world, who are surprised by what they perceive as different behaviour from their Shrek. Shrek and Donkey end up arriving at a castle. They journey inside and come across the princess from the book. The princess is smitten by Shrek's appearance, and is dismayed to find that he's married. Eventually, Shrek and Donkey find their way back to their world, only to find the former's evil counterpart terrorising everyone and causing damage. Shrek realises how his counterpart is more dangerous and indestructible than him, and enlists the dragon and the dronkeys to fight him. Eventually they overpower him, and Shrek contemplates sending his counterpart back to his own world, but remains worried he will continue to terrorise the creatures of that world. Shrek shows his counterpart a mirror. The counterpart is initially horrified, believing it to be a similarly hideous creature, but regains his confidence when realising it's his reflection. Having had a sense of what it's like to be terrorised, the counterpart promises to improve for the better. Shrek remembers his encounter with the princess, and takes his counterpart back to his world to meet her. The counterpart and the princess become mutually smitten by their shared ugliness, and marry, with Shrek and his family and friends in attendance. All the while, there could be an explanation as to why Shrek's world looks too clean. It's being controlled by an evil black and white Mickey Mouse in another dimension, who wants to buy it out, and make it more in line with Disney's clean aesthetic. Shrek enlists his counterpart to confront Mickey, who tries to offer Shrek a huge sum of money to buy his world. But Shrek, not wanting to go down a path of greed like his past enemies, refuses. Mickey tries to kill them both, but Shrek throws red paint at him, resulting in authorities breaking in and arresting Mickey for copyright infringement. Shrek and his counterpart go back to their worlds, with Shrek's world maintaining its grainy aesthetic once again. If this was what happened, I'd be very surprised, but pleasantly. That said, if this is what the plot is, I think I deserve to be recognised as having prediction levels on par with The Simpsons.